And as the father of two daughters, it's with a heavy heart that we talk about what's happening at the border of the U.S. and Mexico in our name and with our tax dollars. You know, when I think of what I would do as a father to protect my daughters if they were facing the prospect of being targeted by gangs, being subject to forced recruitment, rape, torture, extortion. If my family was threatened, I certainly would do whatever possible to save them and to protect them, including traveling thousands of miles to get to the United States to ask for asylum and to seek safety. What's been happening at our border is un-American, is unacceptable, and it's time for the American people to rise up and tell this administration no more, not in our name. Let me first introduce Congressman Ruben Gallego from the 7th District of Arizona, who's going to lead us off. Congressman?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to all the fathers here. I am the proud father of Michael Grant Gallego. He is 1 year and 5 months. The idea that our American government officials are right now tearing apart someone's son or daughter from a father and not telling that person when they will be able to see their son, where is their son or daughter, when will you be reunited. This is happening in America. This is happening right now. If this was happening in a third world country or in any other country, we as the United States would actually be standing strongly and saying that is not what you do. That is human exploitation. That is something that is un-American, that it's inhumane. But we're doing it. We're doing it, and to make it worse, we have government officials that are proud that we're doing it. When did this become this America? When did we think that this is allowed? This is my beautiful baby boy. I'm a single dad, so I only get to see him on the weekends. On Mondays, when I have to drop him off at daycare, he cries his eyes out because he's afraid he's never going to see me again. There are fathers that actually do have that feeling. They do not know when they're going to see their kid again. And it's this government, this Trump administration, that is causing that. How can we call ourselves Americans and allow this to happen in our name? We cannot. It is unjust. And if you're a father in this country, or have ever been a father in this country, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, you need to reach out. You need to reach out and say, this is not how we do things. This is not what Americans are, and we need to stop this automatically. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Gallego. We're next going to hear from our champion, our leader, Congressman Luis Gutierrez from Chicago.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and all the work of America's Voice, and Ruben and Polis. It's good to be here. I wanted to follow as a dad with you, Congressman. So this is my daughter, Omaira, and just put this right here. This is my daughter, Omaira, and my grandson, Luis Andres. I'm here because I'm guaranteed that when I go to work, at the end of the day, I'm going back to them. They're going to see me. They know that Grandpa and Papi is not going to be separated from them. They have that guarantee. And I came here to say that I want that same guarantee for other daughters and other grandchildren, that they have the same guarantee that I do, that they're going to see their daughter, their grandchildren, and that their grandchildren and daughter never fear que papi va a desaparecer, que abuelito, he calls me grandpa, que grandpa is not going to disappear, that he's there for them. Because I cannot imagine the void in my life, the emptiness in my life, if I were to be separated from them. And I know they feel the same way about me. And so that's the tragedy of what goes on. And so when Ruben invited me to be here and speak as a dad, he said he was coming to speak as a dad. I wanted to speak as a dad too. We speak as members of Congress all the time, but I wanted to come speak as a dad. And yeah, I'm signing up for Medicare this year, so I'm a grandpa too. And Luis Andres adds so much to my life, as I hope I add so much to him. And so I wanted to say that I can't think of a more cruel action of the government. I can't think of anything more cruel, more inhumane than to rip a child, 18-month-old child, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 5th grader, to rip that child from the arms of their mom and their dad. It's psychological torture. I mean, understand something. I cannot imagine what it would be like that I were in one room, a wall separating me from my daughter and my grandson, and to hear them scream, to hear them scream, to hear them cry for me, and me not be able to reach across that wall to them, and know that my grandson will be scarred for life. That's what we're doing. We are scarring children for the rest of their lives, and it's wrong. And only in this new day of 1984 newspeak can we have the Attorney General say that a woman who has suffered rape, who has suffered constant beating, torture, women fleeing for their lives because they have died in Central America at the hands of a man, that is a private matter. In America, Mr. Attorney General, that's not a private matter. That is a matter that is taken up by the American people in defense of women. There isn't a state's attorney, and I suggested all of the reporters, just go back to your own jurisdictions. Look up your state's attorney. Look up their websites. Republican, Democrats all have a special division against domestic abuse. Yet this Attorney General tells us that that's a private matter. It's not a private matter. We will stand up for women in my congressional district, in the United States, around the world, and definitely at our border that come fleeing. Lastly, they keep, and even some of our friends, talk about illegal. It is not illegal to come to the United States, to come to our border, fleeing systematic rape, torture, death at the hands of some of the most vile cartels, and come to our border and say, I am seeking asylum. That's not illegal. You know what that is? One of the greatest American traditions, that we accept people in the United States that are fleeing injustice and death in their countries. And that's a tradition that we're going to continue. And so we need to fight hard. Yesterday, 10 colleagues and I went down. We shut down the Border Patrol office. We're going to continue to take actions against this administration until such time they cease this. So for Omaira and for Luis Andres, for my grandson, for my daughter, I'm going to stand up for all of the other grandchildren and all of the other daughters and sons and say I stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Gutierrez. We're now going to hear from a congressman from Colorado, and my hope is that the next governor of Colorado, Representative Jared Polis.
Thank you, Frank. I'm here as the father of a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm glad to join some of my colleagues who are also fathers of kids on the eve of Father's Day weekend. And as we all stand ashamed by the actions of our own government, it's simply appalling and inexcusable that ICE and CBP agents are separating small children like mine. There's Cora and there's Caspian, and our own government is separating parents from their kids. You know, in the United States, we have laws that protect the rights of parents and the rights of families, and under this administration, those laws are not being followed. That's why I'm proud to join my colleagues in demanding that ORR and ICE provide information on how many children are being placed in Colorado, what type of care they are receiving, and above all, reunite families. We stand for strong families. And the fact that on the eve of Father's Day, we stand in opposition to actions taken by the Trump administration to forcibly separate kids from their parents is embarrassing to us, to a nation, and is contrary to the strong family values that we share. We can't turn a blind eye to how our broken immigration laws are enabling this administration to prey on vulnerable families. I think it's important that we stand together, yes, of course, as members of Congress, yes, as those who are fortunate enough to have some kind of soapbox to talk about the importance of fathers and mothers being with their kids, but also to lend our voice to the moral voice of fathers everywhere, trying to put our face and say this could be our family, these could be our kids, and this could be your family, and this could be your kids. Families deserve to be together. I'm honored to join my colleagues in reinforcing the voice of fathers who happen to be members of Congress, that the actions of this administration have to stop, and we need a full accounting and information for where these kids are, and the administration needs to make sure to take every step under the law that families are together, because families deserve to be together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Jared Polis of Colorado. It's a special honor for me to introduce our next speaker. I am a son of Connecticut, and I'm so proud that the state I grew up in is represented by such a tremendous advocate and fighter for human rights and for basic dignity, Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut.
Thank you. I really want to thank my House colleagues, whom I very much admire for their great work on this issue, and of course the advocates who are every day fighting this battle and in the trenches. You know, I'm here as a dad of 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, but more important, I'm here as the son of an immigrant. My dad came to this country as a penniless refugee in 1935 to escape persecution. He had not much more than the shirt on his back. He knew virtually no one, and he spoke no English. Under Donald Trump's rules, he would have been sent back to Germany. This country gave my father a chance to succeed. Nobody loved America more than my dad. And I often think how sad and ashamed he would be as an immigrant who became a United States citizen and gave back to this country of the utterly and inexcusably inhumane and brutally cruel practices that President Trump has imposed on this country. I've read about some of the detention centers that exist for unaccompanied minors. Literally thousands of children are imprisoned, there's no other term for it, in this great country for no other crime than trying to escape persecution, death, torture, just as my dad did. Ripping apart families, separating kids from their parents at the youngest of ages is bad for America, because we will reap the whirlwind of the damaged lives that we are creating. Separating kids from their parents is traumatic and extraordinarily hurtful and harmful. And those young people, if they are separated for long, will bear scars that will hurt them and all of us for years to come. So I'm hoping that on this Father's Day, Donald Trump and his administration think about what it means to be a dad and care about a young child who is ripped away from parents who have no idea where he is going, or she, and face the prospect of uncertain reunification. The costs are enormous in human terms, and this financial costs are equally burdensome. So even if Donald Trump doesn't care about the human beings, I hope he cares about the financial costs, because there's absolutely no justification for this policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Last but not least, we're going to hear from a ferocious advocate for immigrants, Tom Jowitz, who's the Vice President for Immigration Policy at the Center for American Progress.
Thank you so much, Frank, and thanks everyone for having me here. It's really an honor to be able to speak on this topic. I'm a policy wonk at my heart, and I don't often get personal, but there's no issue that's affected me as strongly as this administration's policy of separating thousands of children from their parents at the border. So this past Saturday morning, I was in a group speech therapy appointment for my son. He's 7 years old. 7 years ago, when he was born, around the time of his birth, he had a brain injury. And at the 24-hour checkup that we had with the doctor in the hospital, they came in and told us that he was having seizures and that he had stopped breathing several times. For much of the next week, he was on life support. And over the last 7 years, he's made a lot of progress through a lot of hard work. He's able now to communicate much more effectively vocally, verbalizing, but it's still a struggle every single day, and we work with him. He's still largely nonverbal, and we work with him, even when we're not even aware of the fact that we're working with him, to try and improve his ability to speak for himself. So I was in this speech therapy appointment, and like any distracted parent at this point, my phone buzzes, and I decided to check it. And I opened up my email and saw an article in the Washington Post about a father, Marco Antonio Muñoz, who came to the United States a month ago with his wife and with his son, who was 3 years old. Shortly before that, his own brother-in-law had been murdered in Honduras, and he came seeking protection. Instead, when he came to our country, right away, a Border Patrol agent told him that they were going to separate him from his family. Like any parent, right, he held on to his son and held him tighter, so tightly that a Border Patrol agent then came and, according to the reports, forcibly ripped his child out of his arms and separated him from them. He was upset, right, understandably. So they put him in a metal cage, what this Border Patrol agent told the reporter they think of as a dog kennel. And, to his credit, according to the reports, he wasn't being aggressive to anyone, he wasn't assaulting anyone, but he was upset, he was shaking the cage. So they were nervous about how anxious he was, and Border Patrol decided to transfer him 30 miles away to a local jail, a county jail, Starr County Jail in Texas, where they then put him in a padded isolation cell. Within the next 12 hours, he had died by suicide. So tomorrow is my son's 7th birthday. And Sunday, of course, is Father's Day. I'm going to spend Father's Day thinking about Marco, who it turns out was born on my exact birthday, but 1 year after me. I'm going to think about his son, 3 years old, who is 1 year younger than my youngest, and who just lost his father because of this administration's intentional and unnecessary policy of separating children from their parents. And I'm going to think about my own son, right, and what I would do to protect him, and what I would do if someone tried to take him away. I want to take one more brief second to say that what we're going to see next week in Congress that's being sold as legislation to stop family separation is a cruel and disgusting hoax. When Donald Trump a month ago tweeted out that this policy of separation was the result of a cruel, horrible, he said, I think a horrible democratic law, he was trying to deflect responsibility from a policy that is 100% his own doing. No law requires them to do this. But it's important to say that the reason he was doing that strategically was to set up exactly the fight we're going to see in Congress next week, which is a fight over a change to legislation that he now has set the tone is going to suggest, and we're seeing this yesterday with the way that the bill is being described, as ending family separation. Let me tell you what this bill is going to do. This bill will end family separation only by closing America's borders to people who are fleeing persecution. It's going to end it by allowing more parents and children to be deported without any due process back to the violence they're fleeing. It's going to end family separation by allowing for the prolonged, perhaps indefinite, detention of parents and children in custodial settings. There's nothing about this policy that is about ending family detention. It is about increasing family incarceration. It is about closing our borders, and is part of a consistent attack by this administration on immigrants, immigration, and refugees from day one. So I think it's very clear that we be honest about that. Members of Congress had an opportunity this week to step forward and try to pursue some bipartisan legislation to address the situation facing Dreamers, another totally unnecessary crisis created by Donald Trump. They decided not to do that. They decided to, in a sense, cynically pursue a purely partisan approach to this issue, and they're going to take Dreamers hostage to further cut legal immigration to the country and close down our asylum system. It's shameful, and I think we need to have our eyes wide open for what's going to happen next week on the floor. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Tom Jowitz of the Center for American Progress. Please forgive Congressman Gutierrez. He has to give a 5-minute speech on the House floor, so he had to run off. Are there any questions for the members who are here? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, this is a total hoax. The Flores settlement agreement was entered into because we had children who were being held in custody for prolonged periods of time without proper care and conditions. At this point in time, when people come to our ports and request protection, there is nothing in law that requires the administration to take them into custody. There's nothing in law that requires them to separate parents and children and render people unaccompanied and send them to Health and Human Services custody. When people come between the ports and request protection, there is nothing in law that requires the administration to criminally prosecute people even before it even looks into whether or not they have valid asylum claims. That's something that people, I think, don't understand. We are prosecuting first before we ever give anyone an opportunity to even make their case that they're coming here for asylum. And it's that prosecution that then renders those kids unaccompanied, that then sends them to Health and Human Services. The administration has the ability to care for kids who are truly unaccompanied, and it can do that in compliance with the Flores settlement agreement. Ending the Flores settlement agreement isn't going to end family separation, isn't going to improve the situation of families who are held in custody. It's just going to make the conditions for children who are in custody that much worse. Yeah, let me say real quick. I think one thing that's totally untrue. Let's take one real deep breath here for a second. Okay, that's right.
Can we take a real question? Any other questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm wondering so you're in a similar situation, or what you're going to do? What is the plan?
Well, unfortunately, right now we have to hope that the administration realizes that this is a public action that is not supported by Americans. We're not cruel human beings. This administration may be cruel human beings, but Americans themselves are not. And hopefully through some political pressure, whether it's with the upcoming elections or the fact that it's not politically viable, it's not sustainable for them, that they would actually reverse these orders. And if that doesn't matter, then I think to them, then I would hope that most Americans would use this upcoming election to actually, have an opportunity to put a check on this presidency by electing people that are actually going to do their due diligence, actually do their job and use the powers of the Constitution to keep this man in check and his administration.
Senator?
We have legislation. We need to be very realistic that the legislation is broadly supported by Democrats. Senator Feinstein is leading it. A number of us did an event yesterday announcing its introduction. It would permit separation of children from parents only if there's evidence of human trafficking or abuse, which is a tiny fraction of the cases. Abuse or trafficking on the part of the person bringing them across the border. So this legislation has been introduced, but in the meantime, to be very blunt, the biggest tool we have is shame. We need to shame this administration into changing an inhumane, un-American policy, because it is totally a construct of this administration. It is not required by law. It is not precedented in recent history. It was not done under the previous administration. It is creating thousands of detainees. And if you want to know what the living conditions are like, have a look at the Washington Post this morning, which describes a visit to one of these facilities in Brownsville, the Walmart that was converted. It is probably better than living in a desert, but it is not much more than imprisonment.
Right. Any other additional questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Neil, right? Dude.
Really?
You interrupted Obama when he was announcing DACA. You're famous